So let's look at the sculpting tools. There's on the Mudbox interface is very simple. It has the sculpt tools down here, paint tools, pose tools to pose characters. Basically, any type of geometry we can pose it. It's very easy to pose. And then selection and move tools. It has layers. It has an object list. Object list. Imagine that as like the outliner in Maya. It's the same thing. Here you have all the objects that you. It looks similar too. It has all the cameras, and then it has the lights and the materials that are like default. Viewport filters. Those are interesting filters for the viewport that are real-time rendering. Like if you turn on the tone mapper, it has like a backlight. You have depth of field. We'll see what it is. We need an object here to understand exactly how these work, but that's another good thing that we have, real-time kind of rendering effect. And those things can actually be good when you texture stuff, because you can add shadows when you're texturing. However, it gets kind of heavy. So make sure that sometimes if your machine really starts choking, that means that some of these can like really affect the calculation, and that's why they add to the processing speed. So let's start with some object. Let's bring an object and start using the sculpting tools. And that way, instead of me explaining each one thing what it does, I will bring an object and then I will use stuff. Let's bring a cylinder. So create mesh. It has basic head. It doesn't have a cylinder. We can bring it from Maya. Let's bring a cube. So it creates the cube right in the middle here. I'm going to change the material because this is kind of dark, so I'm going to change it to a lighter color. You can see here that if I right click, I have all these this marquee menu. It looks like Maya. They made it very similar to Maya, so I can go and say assign new material. Something's wrong here. Assign new material, Mudbox material. I know it's kind of slow. This software is heavier, much heavier than Maya in its response. So while I'm recording now, it might take some while sometimes to calculate even simple things. So I'm going to make sure I use a light. Let's make a light material here. Okay, so we can see it better. And let's look at this polygon here. This polygon cube, if I press W, I can see how many quads it has. See, it's already like, it already has a lot of quads, a lot of, even the first kind of mesh, primary mesh. I can increase the resolution. So those are like a lot of faces here, but we still need more to make, to start sculpting. I will increase the resolution by going to Mesh, and I can say add new subdivision level or Shift D. But before I do that, I want to go to my properties. I think they changed that here. It's I'm used to 2011, so there's like a little bit different preferences. Oh, the new subdivision level options. I was working on a little prop yesterday, and I had to unclick the smooth partitions. And that's kind of an interesting thing because Maya 2011 didn't have that. It had that, but there were like some problems with it. Now they fixed everything. So I'm going to turn this on. That means that when I increase the detail, it softens the mesh. But if you have this off, increasing the detail will keep the mesh as it looks like it. It's just going to increase the quads, the number of faces. I'll show you what I mean later. So let's do this first. Let's make sure that it's going to smooth it. I'm going to press Shift D. You can see it already smoothed it on the edges around. Another Shift D. I have a lot of polygons. You can see the number by going to Object List. My object is this one, this cube here. You can see that if I open this information here, it says that right now we are on level, it numbers it at level 6, and it says 98,306 vertices. 98,304 faces. Those are how many faces we have. So that's a lot of resolution compared to what we do in Maya usually. So I'm going to deselect this object by clicking select objects and clicking somewhere around the grid. And I'm going to start using the sculpting tools. I'm going to make this wireframe disappear by clicking W. And first of all, looking at this circle here, which is my brush. This is my brush. It has a size and a strength. So the size here, it's 25. You can see here right now. It says size 25, strength 15. No mirroring yet. Let me select the first sculpting tool and just start sculpting. See, I can actually sculpt by clicking and dragging around. It's better to use the pen because it's easier. So how do we quick change the size of the brush instead of going over here and like using the strength? Hold down the B key exactly like Maya and click and left to right, hold the click and go left to right, and you can change the size. If you click on M as material, not so if you click on M and hold down the key and then click and drag up and down, you will see that we're changing the strength. That's a shortcut. So I'm gonna make it medium strength and go closer to this and just start making like painting on this, like brushing it. So I'm gonna start. This is very harsh. Let me first of all increase the size and reduce the strength. Okay, I want to create some sort of seam here. So I'm going to go around and do the same for this part. So sort of like a lip. All around. So let's say I'm trying to make a straight line. Sometimes it's not easy. Let's say I don't like this, I want to soften it a little bit. Let me make the brush smaller. Now to soften it, a quick way, hold down the Shift key and start softening it by brushing on it, on the area. So you can kind of soften that area. So I made this, and then I'm on the Sculpt tool. The Sculpt tool, the way it works is it pulls geometry out. So basically, and I'm going to use the Shift tool to like soften it. So I'm pulling geometry out. What if I want to push it in? Well, every tool has settings here. It says every Sculpt tool has a size, a strength, a mirroring, so we can mirror. So let's see what that does. Mirroring does, let's say I want to use the mirror and I go X. Look, this is our mirror axis. X, Y, Z. let's use the X. Let's click on the X. Now the mirror says that we're going to be sculpting, but it's going to sculpt both ways. In both areas. And that is the same like for this area or for the Z, depending where you want to mirror your object. So I'm going to click off right now. And this is the invert function. These four things are the most important. Invert function means clicking on it, it will do the opposite. It will push the geometry in. If I invert function, it will pull the geometry out. You can see I'm pulling out, and then invert, I'm pushing in. So those are but if I don't want to go over here all the time, let's leave it like just I'm pulling the geometry out, and using the shift I'm just gonna smooth it. Let's say I want to start pushing the geometry inwards here. I can hold down Control key and start pushing in. So Control. Oops. I didn't mean to do this. This is a new way to. Sometimes it gets stuck for some reason. I know that this is probably a bug in the Mac. Okay, let's go Objects, Sculpt tool. So I'm on the Sculpt tool. I'm going to click Control and start pushing the geometry inwards. Let's say I want to start making more straight lines, because it is quite hard, you know, like especially when you're far away. Let's do this here. There is this amazing tool that says steady stroke. That means it's gonna help us to make a straight line. If I click on the steady stroke, it has a distance. Let's leave the distance 4. See, what happens when I click on that is when I click and start to brush, it doesn't start. See this kind of weird line and this little green button? When the green point reaches the end of this little line, it's like it's gonna start pulling. It's like having a rope and pulling an object. So it's easier. So the rope that is represented by this little line is 4 units. If I make it longer, like if I make this like, let's say 15 units, 16 units, the line gets quite larger, so I have to go all the way to that, and then it becomes like easy to create like shapes, because you have a little bit more control. The reason is, until you reach to the end of this line, it delays the process, so you kind of like have more control. You're kind of like slowly delaying the line, so it makes it easier. And I can go back to over here and like make this, in this case, a little bit smaller. Like let's say 6 is probably fine. Hold down Control key and do a steady stroke.